Hello, everyone. I'm Allison, and welcome to my weekly Meltdowns coverage rewatch of Bigbrother 10. Tonight, we are covering episodes 4 through 6. So if you haven't watched episodes 4 through 6 or 1 through 6, why are you here? Go back and then leave, then come back and do whatever you want, okay? Hello, how's everyone doing? Tyler?
I'm pretty sunburned. I got my first sunburn of the year, but I just want to say I listened to the interview that you guys did with Brian Hart, and I was thoroughly entertained the whole time. Like, he is such a storyteller, and to hear his experiences with Bigbrother 10 was really, really cool, because he wasn't one of the people that did Dan's BB10 reunion. Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, but last year, was it? That he did that on Instagram Live. So it was really good to see Brian talk about Bigbrother for a change, because I feel like he doesn't do that often. So it's good.
No, I've never seen him talk about it since he did exit interviews. Like, I'm pretty sure he never has. Like, it's not something he had any. Like, he said he didn't even watch his season. So
I listened to him talk about
that
all
was
that
great
stuff all day. Yeah, it was great.
He was wonderful. And I will hold him to it. If Allison or Alex, myself, Tyler, any of us get on Bigbrother, we will hold him to it that's the season he has to watch.
Perfect.
Just saying.
And if we get voted out first or something happens, we blame Brian Hart, because apparently going into episode 4, 5, and 6, it's still that effing Brian Hart's fault.
We blame Brian Hart, but then we also say, hey, can you get us in touch with Boogie so we can get a job in the nightlife industry? Okay, thank you very much.
That's right. We want to F past house guests. But
anyway, so going into week 2, I was telling you guys in the chat earlier, in my looking back on this before I rewatched it, I was like, week 2 is kind of in my opinion, this slow week of Bigbrother 10, but there was still a lot that happened that we can definitely get into here. I don't know how we want to format this, if Beth wants to lead us with telling us all that happened, or we can break it down episode by episode.
Yeah, all I know is you do. I just want to say, all I know is Jerry drops the B word during this episode, and it's amazing. He says bitch.
It was great. It was a wonderful moment.
It was awesome.
Yeah, I'll do the newbie's perspective of how the week went, and then happy to go back and talk about bigger moments. But essentially for episodes 4 through 6, we have Jesse, who wins the HOH reign. He wants to immediately say, I need to put up Rennie because I don't like Rennie. But the 8-person alliance really convinces him, no, we really need to make sure that Dan, who is aligned closely with Brian, and Steven, who is closely aligned with Brian, are the 2 targets up there, so that we can pick off everybody who ever had any association with Brian. They're even iffy on Angie. And Angie has to have a conversation with Jesse where he kind of scolds her and says, why were you hanging out so much with him? You were putting yourself in a bad situation. And she has to kind of put her tail between her legs a little bit on that one. So she narrowly escapes getting put up. On the side, Jesse and Dan have a good conversation where Dan basically says, if we go forward in the game together, as long as I'm not the one who goes home this week, know that I won't be coming after you for retaliation. I will work with you. I will prove my loyalty. I'm a loyal player. I was loyal to Brian on the way out. I can be loyal to you as well. So we see those 2 get nominated. At the same time, we start seeing a little bit of discourse happening about Keisha's loyalty. Is Keisha loyal to the 8, or is she loyal to Steven, who she clearly has a close personal friendship connection in the house? She catches wind of that, decides that she wants to take matters into her own hands and bring it up in front of the majority of that alliance. Libra playing dumb on that. Oh no! Tell us who it is. Tell us who was saying that when we were.
Baby girl, tell us. Baby, you gotta tell us. You gotta have a name.
And so Keisha's loyalty was even into question with this. And I think Keisha even said herself that she wishes that she could just jump alliances at that point, but she knew it wouldn't be smart for her game, that she should keep her word to her alliance, but that she wishes she could keep Steven in, specifically because she sees a connection where Dan could be used as a number in the opposite alliance, where Steven couldn't be. And they could use Steven if they wanted to. So Keisha, for what I have gathered from you guys, is a recruit. And I think that she's like a really great recruit. We're already seeing some really good social chops coming out of her just in week 2 as well. We also have a foursome alliance forming between Memphis. No, you're going to have to help me with this. So it was Memphis,
Jesse, Michelle, and Angie.
Yes. Okay. And that foursome is interesting because it does have a couple people who are from the 8, giving them a little closer group to work with. But it also includes Angie and Jesse, who are kind of a little bit on the outs of the 8 as well. So that foursome, I can't wait to see how they either get the tables turned on them in coming weeks or potentially start running the game. So we have all those different factors. We also have a moment where in the food competition, one team had both of the older people, Rennie and Jerry, on their team.
And we split up and make it fair.
And Libra went apeshit on that. And pretended like she wasn't being a little ageist, even though she was. And Rennie did a good job in it. And Jerry, even to my point, I thought he did a fine job. It was just, what was it, April, or someone wasn't calling when she was throwing the stuff up, so he didn't know. So there was a lot of miscommunication on that team. But it led to a blow up between Libra, Rennie, and Jerry, where Rennie and Jerry were yelling at her for saying that they lost because they had the older people on the team. And Libra was saying, we're just trying to make it balanced, which led to a really great potential plan by Steven to try to say, listen, Libra is someone that is making the whole house mad. And for all the people who have votes this week, you would have plenty of votes and people would be fine with her potentially taking mine or Dan's place. This could be an easy week. We can get rid of somebody, and then you can use me and Dan as numbers moving forward for your game, Jesse and Michelle, because Michelle won the veto. Ultimately, Michelle does not make that decision. She decides not to use the power of veto, and Steven is voted out unanimously. I think
but
that's it.
Not before uttering the words. What did he say?
Suck it, bitches.
Suck it, bitches.
What a weird eviction speech.
Is that the last time someone has actually said something like that?
No.
I mean, because because I'm sitting here thinking, who
cornbread.
Oh, fuck y'all on OTT. Oh, cornbread.
I've never seen OTT, but even I know the fuck y'all.
Okay.
Bye, cornbread. We love you. Fuck y'all.
No, the way he says it is he's walking. Fuck y'all. Okay, Tyler, you have to watch a couple episodes of OTT in the future just for me. Please, Lord Jesus.
After BB10.
I would love to do that. Yeah.
I know. But yeah.
Say hi to our families for us. I hope your families choke.
Amazing. And he was like the first one evicted too, so it wasn't even like he had like spent a lot of time there.
It's like 5 days.
Yeah. So when I was talking last week about me really loving the food comps this season because it brings a lot of drama that bleeds into the game, this is exactly what I was talking about. As soon as I saw the competition, I was like, oh shit, like this is where like everything goes down with Libra. And you're right, Beth, like she really does make a lot of ageist remarks to April. Of course, we see them like talking lots of shit in the storage room. And Keisha's like, I think that they did great. I think that they did fine. Rennie was the one that came up with like the cupping method for getting the wine like in the cup and
work that
storing it.
wine, honey. She knows what she's doing.
She knows to work her way around a glass of wine.
Yeah,
she's like, if it's a good Chianti or whatever, I can get that in there.
And Libra's just like, I
Man.
can't do slop again. I can't do it. I can't do it. Like they are so dramatic about slop this season, even though like they don't even have like have not rooms or anything like terrible like they have to do.
Thinking about that,
I just noticed that too.
When did they start introducing the have not rooms?
Big Brother 11, the next season.
Oh, the next season. Okay.
Yeah.
The next season has like a YMCA pool room.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, like, so Libra's on slop once again, but she still has the comfort of her waterbed. I feel like classic Libra is her sitting in that corner waterbed in the heavy room, talking shit about somebody, and then somebody coming in and calling her out, and her just screaming,
and just
no, I did not. No, I did not.
But let's not forget when they're sitting there, who is it? Rennie, Jerry, and Keisha. Were the three of them sitting there talking about how Keisha had made a remark about the age, and Jerry just mumbles, "Bitch." I was like, "Whoa! I totally forgot about that."
I love that, and I also love that he was just like, "Well, I'm gonna go talk to her." Like immediately was just like, "It's time. I'm gonna go call her out." And then he immediately comes in and starts giving it to her, and she goes from 0 to 60 in like 3 seconds. Where she's like, "What's up, Jerry?" "I did not."
Well, she's like sleeping. She's like in bed, like clearly asleep. And he goes and confronts her, but not before doing some weird Libra impression where he's like got a cup of tea. I don't know what that is. Like, Libra just walk around all the time with a guy. Like, I've never seen her, not once. But
listen, if you wake me up out of a deep sleep bitching at me, I'm gonna come out of it like a
I'm
night
much more likely to be like, "What? No, stop it."
Things are going to be flying and throwing. There's going to be a cat airborne. Something's going to be happening.
Cat airborne. Oh my God. Could you imagine if Allison gets put in the Big Brother house ever, and then they decided this is the season where everybody brings a cat? Allison
be evicted the first night. Your cat's an asshole.
Just Finley's causing more drama than ever.
No, what would be worse is if I get on Big Brother and I win HOH and the producers think it's funny to have only pictures of my fucking cat.
I could totally actually see that happening.
It'd be like Jesse having only pictures of himself posing in different muscular forms.
Right?
Well, I don't want to spoil anything next week, but Keisha's HOH does have some dog pictures in it. So
I figured they had
a
conversation about dogs that worked its way into the conversation here. So yeah, that conversation was funny too, because it started off all innocent, and then I can't remember who she was talking with, and he was like,
Steven.
Yeah, Steven was like, "Yeah, what if they die when we're in here?" Or like all this stuff. It got real morbid about it. She was like, "Don't say that."
He was like, the dog will probably forget who you are.
Yeah,
one thing these episodes are great with, and like, it's a little boring, you know what I mean? Because like a group solidified post, to get out Brian, and then it's like only further cementing itself post Brian. Little cracks are starting to form, but like obviously by the end of this round, nothing has changed. It's the same as it was at the start of the round in terms of like dynamic. I mean, like some people are drifting towards Angie, some people are drifting towards Dan, some people are drifting towards Rennie, you know what I mean? But like there's still this like core nucleus. But the thing that's really interesting about this round, I think, is you get to see a great juxtaposition between what Dan does and what Steven does. And what Dan does is so calm and composed right from the get-go. You know what I mean? At no point is he ever panicked. At no point is he ever like, just everything he does is so smart. You know what I mean? Yeah. And he realizes that he's in a position he's calculating the odds of him winning and the value of him winning versus the value of maintaining his weak presence. And I mean, and it's crazy when Steven is then later in the week, like campaigning to save himself, and people are like, it's not you, it's nothing personal, you're just so much better in competitions. Like, they have nothing to go on but like one thing that was like totally luck based, you know what I mean? But like this idea has taken such hold because of the way they've maintained the idea. And Steven has continually panicked and looked desperate. And as the week goes on, I mean, it's just so clear how one style is more effective than the other. And I think that's what this round is really good at showing.
Oh, absolutely. And I think once again, we can blame that damn Brian Hart for it, because we saw Brian be such a mover and a shaker the round before. And so you sit back and if you're in that house, do you go with the person who is really trying to stay there, because that is like showing all of his cards? He's a mover and a shaker. He's social. Oh my gosh, Keisha might like him personally. What does that mean? Oh, he's relatively good at competitions from what we can tell, even though it's luck based, all that kind of stuff. And then you have Dan, who's in a complete juxtaposition of it, where you're sitting back and you're like, oh, well, this guy's a little calmer. He's not appearing as threatening in any style of the game, and any portion of it. So I think that that's absolutely where Dan did a great job assessing the information that was ahead of him. Said, hey, my best guy that I had in this house just left because he was playing Steven's kind of game. So I'm going to let Steven take the fall on the sword for this, look manipulative, look like he's really social in with everybody. And I'm just going to appear like I'm weaker and that I'm malleable for other people's use.
Well, I think this is when we start to get shades of Dan's mist for the first time, really. We have to really look at Dan's really analyzing who exactly is the head of household here and how can I appeal to that person. So Jesse's somebody that really values physical strength, competitions, and himself. And so what does Dan do? He makes himself seem like a weak player and somebody who's loyal to strong players. So that's exactly what he does to Jesse, and Jesse falls for it hook, line, and sinker. And I think Jesse really influenced the house to make sure that Steven goes home here instead of Dan.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Steven didn't go up to the HOH room because he was asleep.
Yeah.
Oh
they
my
were
God.
looking at the monitor and his ass was in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's like such a good point to bring up, not only about Steven, but about Jesse. Like, you really have to know, to Tyler's point, who's in charge, who are the people who are at play here. I think Steven potentially could have gotten Michelle to use the veto, but had he known how to speak to Michelle in this search in that instance, and to Jesse, I think it could have been easy to say, like, Libra was really close to winning that veto too. Libra has proven that she's a strong social player. Libra has proven that she has all these strengths that myself and Dan don't have. And you two do have them, and that she's a challenge to both of you moving forward. If he had played that round, as well as saying, plus, I don't think you have to worry about any of us coming after you guys next week, because you'd be doing the entire house a service with not only the power that you have, but because you guys are strong players. Yeah. I think that would have been a more tactful way to go about it, because I do think that Michelle also sees herself as a very strong player. She sees herself as a strong-willed, independent woman, and wouldn't want to necessarily be taking what other people are saying and telling her what to do in that situation. So I think that while Steven had the right idea, I just don't think he executed it right with the personalities that are there. Versus Dan, to your exact point, was able to stroke the ego of Jesse and say, hey, you're obviously the alpha dude of the house here. I could be your beta. I could be the person who can work with you.
I even wrote down how in his speech before they cast the vote, right? Of course, we see Steven just say all these stupid inside jokes and then suck it bitches, whatever. That's not really doing anything. But Dan's looking past that, right? He's saying he calls himself a weak player in front of the whole house and someone that got off on the wrong foot. And he's had a lot of fun bonding with people over the week. So he's looking forward to how can I change the perception of me moving forward so that people's guard is really, really down on me. And one person that I noticed that was saying that their guard was not down about Dan this week was Keisha. She said multiple times in the diary room, I think it might be a mistake keeping Dan here. And yes, she's really good friends with Steven, but she's saying if we don't deal with him, he could end up targeting us and becoming a big player in this game. And I just thought that was really interesting. I loved watching this week through Keisha's perspective, because I feel she had a lot of choices that she had to make in terms of setting herself up moving forward.
Well, it's also interesting because looking at it right now, I mean, it's clear that Keisha is starting to get irritated and frustrated with Libra and with April. But if you look at that alliance, if those three can stay together, I mean, it's almost a female version of the brigade before the brigade. I mean, because you have 3 people who each who are working closely together, who each have a lot of people who are working with them. I mean, April has Ollie, to some extent Jesse, to some extent Michelle. Keisha has Rennie, and and Jerry, and then like Libra seems to be tight with Memphis. Yeah. And so I mean, you have each of them, like, I mean, they have by far a majority of the house like under their control, and it really just comes down to like, how are they going to lose this, or how do they fail to maintain this? Because like as it stands right now, like they have a pretty firm grip on the house.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Alex.
Getting in the way, man. Like if they didn't have the slap, it just helped them.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's something that people really do discount, but like, and I think it's also interesting. It's like back then, these competitions, like, half the house ended up on slop, as opposed to now it's just like 4 people or something like that. Like I think it is like there's more friction, and it does create more, circumstances that could create drama when people are cranky and hungry and stuff like that.
How do they do slop now? Just whatever. Who
the
wants
HOH
to go?
just like picks 4 people.
It varies.
Yeah, it's like that, Allison.
Yeah, it's more often like that than.
I kind of liked how they did it in BB16 with the Fitbit, to be like whoever was the least active had to be on slop the next week. That was so funny. That was the first season I ever watched, and it was when they were doing that. And it was like Caleb would get put on slop because he wasn't active, and I was like, ha ha ha. So
I feel like if I was on slop, I'd just forever be on slop because I'm not gonna be active because I don't have any nutrients. Like it just like becomes a cycle. Like,
but.
Well, I remember in Big Brother Canada 5, they did the pedometers one time, and Karen actually won that competition, which was really funny. She's like the oldest like woman in the house, and she's like the most like physically active, and that just reminds me of my mom and how like energetic she is.
I remember speculating, like we were watching feeds and speculating on who we thought was going to win that. Like, we were watching so much feeds, we were actually like able to, and like everyone had an idea, and nobody was anywhere near. Like nobody thought that was going to happen.
Well, speaking of feeds, Alex, I don't know if were you watching the live feeds for Big Brother 10 at the time?
No.
Okay, because I was wondering, like, the show made it seem like it was pretty close to happening for Libra to be backdoored here. And I was wondering if we knew how close that actually was to happening, or if it was just like the TV show trying to make itself more interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it is interesting though, because like, clearly, like already it looks like this was a bad HOH for Jesse. You know what I mean? Because they're already coming after him, the people that he did all this work for. If he had picked like the people he wanted, Rennie would have been up. You know what I mean? If Rennie wins an HOH somehow, she's for sure coming after Jesse.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like, of course, like this week I think is a good lesson, and like you do what you want. If your alliance is that huge and you're just like following the group, like, they're not going to all
maturity
favor. Yeah,
he was displaying his maturity, Alex, by not putting Rennie.
Sometimes this game really is like that simple. You know what I mean? Like if somebody doesn't like you and is going to come after you, then that's the person you need to put up.
Especially this early on in the season. Like this is only week 2. It doesn't need to be some like huge like strategic decision.
We have someone in the chat that okay. Okay, I'm sorry if Micheline Brill, she says she watched the feeds. The group didn't like Libra, but they wanted the other side out.
Yeah.
More.
Well, I think that really, like the fear of the whole realization that Brian was playing the entire house, right? Like for whatever it was. Like that fear really bonded everyone together. You know what I mean? And I think fear is a really powerful thing in the game. And I think it's a lot easier to just like continue down that road as opposed to, like flip it and try to do something new, because that's uncertain. Whereas getting rid of the Brian people like buys you a few weeks. And, I mean, if you're playing a scared game, you're always looking at like, what's going to keep me going one more round, as opposed to like, how do I set myself up for 5 rounds from now?
Right. Well, let's talk about the POV, because I thought there was some interesting stuff going on here as well. Yes, Allison?
Can I ask a question? I did not understand this POV competition at all. I was actually trying to figure it out, and shocker, I did not understand a bit of it.
I didn't understand how people kept getting it wrong.
I didn't understand that either.
I'm with you, Alex.
Well, I didn't realize what they were doing is shutting. When you would ring in, they would close up the thing, so you couldn't look at the board and say it again. So you had to memorize the order of the state, the license plate. So I can understand people getting nervous under pressure and messing up the state plates.
What do they call those word plates? Is that a rebus?
I have no idea.
I don't know.
A Rebus McIntyre?
But I don't think they really did this comp like many times after this. So
that was a sneeze and a laugh at the same time, by the way, people. Very special.
We need to take your temperature, Beth.
No, I sneeze multiple times as a person anyway, but then you throw in a really dumb pun like Alex just did. It makes me worse. I had a sneeze McIntyre moment. Okay, that was good.
So of course, like we saw before the competition happened, like if Keisha wins the veto, like is she going to save Steven or not? And like is this a choice that she needs to make? So then naturally, of course, Keisha does get picked for the veto competition. Also, Dan has house guest choice, and he chooses Libra because he thinks that she is not going to be like a strong competitor in this competition. Fast forward 5 minutes later, and Dan's the first one out. And
which he clearly threw, right?
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I want to talk to you guys about this because I feel like a lot of people praise like him, like throwing this veto competition, like taking the risk of like making yourself seem like a weak player. But is this like too like post results oriented thinking? Like, are we saying that because Dan won and because like he's labeled as this mastermind? Like, were we saying this at the time when this veto happened? Like, that's probably not a good move because I don't really like the move.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: it's like Jordan Pahar made a similar move on Bigbrother Canada 3, and that's like, you know, he ends up going home that week, and that's looked at as like, oh, what an idiot, and he wasn't even on the block. He ends up like going up after the fact to just like try to help get somebody out, right? So like it's not even on this level, but I don't know, man. Like I think it's obviously a calculated risk. He knows that what he's doing could potentially result in him going home, but he's also very aware of the house dynamic at that point because like he even says when he picks Libra, he knows she'll keep it the same, and he feels like if it stays the same, he's safe. And it does seem like there's no reason for him to think otherwise. Like it doesn't seem like Steven's gaining any traction with this campaigning, and it does seem like Dan has enough people in his corner that like if Steven were to gain traction, somebody would tell him, and he could potentially flip it. So in that case, you know, like if you win the veto there, like yeah, you save yourself that week, but then you establish yourself as a threat. Like he does create himself a path to the end game here that he might not have had if he wins. So I totally get what you're saying, and like I don't think you could ever tell somebody they're making the wrong move by trying to win the veto when they're on the block. Yeah. But I also think like part of why Dan is so great is because he's willing to entertain these kinds of outside of the box ideas that most people wouldn't even consider. I mean, 99 out of 100 players who they cast for this show would never even consider the idea of throwing the veto when they're on the block. The fact that Dan even thinks it through as an idea, I think, is
executes it.
It was why he's really special. Yeah.
So,
I mean, true, it could backfire, though. You're right. It definitely could.
I actually thought we obviously didn't get to see this on the show, but obviously there was a lot of drama involving Libra as well. So there's a part of me that wants to think that maybe what Dan was also thinking is on the off chance that Libra wins, he could also put into, if he hears like I'm in trouble, he could potentially put into her ear, hey, I heard that there was a backdoor plan to get you out. And you won the veto. Like if you get me on your side and if you use the veto on me, I can be a vote for you for whoever you want to go up for this week, and we can work together. So I think that this was actually a really smart move to choose Libra, who he probably saw as being someone who's really social in the game, has a lot of connections. So if he needed numbers, he could potentially get them, but also knew was probably a controversial character in the house as well. And if he needed to twist something, he could, should you win the veto instead of him.
And well, I mean, the other thing is, you know, like you said, like if he's aware of her rising threat level and she wins the veto, even if she doesn't use it on him, I mean, if he knows he's got the votes over Steven, he stays this week. Going into next week, it's easy for him to say like, look, Libra's a social threat. Now she's winning competition. You know what I mean? Like she's already kind of.
Well, I think Beth, I think that goal was accomplished, even though Libra did not win this competition, right? Because Libra has been very vocal about how much she does not like being on slop, right? She doesn't fold in this veto for that slop pass.
Right.
And that really sticks out to Michelle. It's
amazing.
Like she's
really
in this to win this veto, even though she's not nominated, right?
And they kept making a big deal about Keisha staying in it because the threat level of potentially using it on Steven. But I found it interesting that Michelle was really the only one who was thinking about that with Libra. Considering we've had this buildup for 2 weeks now of like Libra being like, I'm on slap and I hate it. Like
she was in last place. I mean, the other two had points. She had no points.
Exactly. Might as well just get it because even if you like have a comeback and get the other one, so you're gonna have enough points to win.
That's a prime example of why I think like big group alliances on Big Brother aren't fun. They create these fear dynamics where like everyone's afraid to do anything to betray the big group. And so as a result, you get these moments where it's just like, oh God, somebody just take the thing, you know, like this is kind of like a microcosm of like the entire season of Big Brother 19, where it was just like, oh, we know who's going to win this competition because you guys have already played a rock, paper, scissors game to determine ahead of time. Like,
and I think that this veto competition is also where Keisha starts to have doubts about like Libra and April. Like, do they really trust her? Because as soon as she's done with the veto competition, Steven tells her that April and Libra were going, you see that? You see that? Like the whole time during the competition. And that really doesn't sit well with Keisha. And that's when she starts thinking like, do I really want to work with these people? Like how, I just feel like that group of three is so interesting to me because I feel like, they like none of those three trust each other, right? But they keep feel like they have to keep coming back to each other. It's like continuously like going on like bad dates with somebody just because for whatever.
They're the only choice in town.
One of my favorite things is just how quickly power goes. Like, you know, there's a huge void, like this vacuum of power left when Brian goes, and it's amazing how quickly not only like they fill it, but how quickly power goes to Libra and April's heads, and they're immediately doing all the things that they got rid of Brian for doing immediately. You know what I mean? Like just micromanaging the entire game because they're in a position to be able to do so now.
Yeah.
Well, because there's 8 of us and there was 1 of him.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, but like Libra and April's foundation of working together is totally built on just talking shit about other people instead of like getting to know one another or trying to look forward in the game together, working together as an alliance. I feel like it's all based on like, I don't trust her. I don't like her. They even said it about Angie, who's like such a non-entity right now. They're like, I don't trust Angie at all. And April's like, I don't like her either.
That's a great point. That's the only times they seem to get along because like they're you know, for the most part they don't like each other, but then it's bonding over Angie conniving or then like Michelle. Like it's always those are the only times they bond, it seems like. Yeah.
Meanwhile, like Angie's just like sitting out in the backyard with Brian's hat, which went for a lot of money on eBay. I remember that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that green beanie hat thing. Like meanwhile, Angie's just like smoking in the backyard with Memphis, being like, I don't like these people. Like I don't give a shit.
Nice people.
Exactly.
And then it's like, well, you know, subconsciously these people probably know it. I don't like these people.
Yeah.
It is pretty. I mean, it does tell you how bad like Steven and Angie are at the game, though. That Steven thinks like he'll be fine just because he hasn't had a fight with Jesse. It's like, well, no, only Rennie's had a fight with Jesse. You know what I mean? And then like Angie thinks that like, you know, like, I mean, again, she's like, well, you know, we haven't had a fight. So it's like, okay, but so like, we're good. They haven't had like big open fights with anyone. You know what I mean? Like, that's not enough. That's like the bare minimum of a social relationship. Like,
so then Jerry says, hold my beer. And then I'm going to go yell at Libra for a bit.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, I feel like this fight is in 2 acts, right? Like first, like Jerry, and then like Jerry comes out and tells Rennie, and Rennie, she like slams her cup down.
That's not what I said.
She goes up and she's like, "You better not. You better not," which is one of my favorite Rennie quotes.
You better not. Oh my god, so good.
One of my favorite things that like I had forgotten is that like the recurring theme of like Rennie getting in these fights, and obviously Rennie edited and like clearly crazy, but in all of these confrontations where like people can't remember what happened, Rennie is correct. Like Jesse is like, you didn't apologize. Rennie clearly apologized. They showed Rennie apologized earlier here. Rennie's like, that's not, I never said that you said we were slow. It's like they go back and Rennie's like, she said something about like, because the old people were on her team. It's like, yeah, that's all she said. Like Jerry like assumed things and ran with it. Like when the game of telephone ends up being the root cause of the problem, for some reason Rennie is always in the right, but then she's always the one who gets the blame. Like, it's pretty fun.
Listen, the older you get, you really retain information. I'm telling you. And the funny thing, well, not for me, but I'll tell you the funny thing. Like Libra talking about the old people and being, let's make it fair. I'm sitting here watching this going, oh my God, if I was on Big Brother, I would be the Jerry. I'd be Jerry.
A 4'10" Jerry.
4'10", 98-pound Jerry.
With cat photos.
And then I got to put up somebody that I don't want to nominate, and I've got to lie. If you guys notice, I'm not wearing any of my Finley t-shirts or anything with cats on it because I'm not being honorable.
Actually, no. If you notice you are wearing something that has Finley on it, you know she's up to shit.
Yeah, exactly.
My shirt, Finley.
But yeah, it's so great because like 99% of that fight is them arguing about what was said or wasn't said, right? It's like you said this, you didn't say this. He said it. I'm saying what you said.
That's not what I said.
And finally, the way it ends, right, is like I didn't say slow old. You better not. Like now,
you better not.
The whole fight was about what happened. But like it's clear neither of us are going to agree about what happened. So you better not.
Good for Libra. Libra's tactic in every argument that she's gotten up with is immediately get to an 11 and just yell the same question over and over and over and over and over, regardless of whatever people are telling you. Be like, but what was said? Who said it? What was said? Who said it?
Girl, you know a woman is pissed when she flies out that waterbed with fucked up hair, barefoot, running around, say what's up, and then you really know a woman is pissed if she's in her negligee robe with her mask up going, what? I just said you better not. I mean, I love it when people fight in pajamas and their hair's fucked up. It is the greatest thing in the world. I don't know why I think it's so funny.
And I mean, she's clearly, she's so mad she's not even making complete sentences. Like, I didn't say slow old.
Yeah, I love like how what Libra during this whole thing, and even when Julie Chen asked her about this on the live show, she stumbles over her words so
much. Yeah,
because she's trying to like revise this to like make herself look
do revisionist history on live television.
Exactly. Yeah.
I know that you're addressing something that happened in the house.
Allison, you're missing like the pageant smile she has like the whole time too.
Yeah, I know, Julie, that you are mentioning something that happened in the house. Can you point it out? Because some people have maps, and in Americas, there's maps, and more children should have maps.
Well, Libra, I'm talking about when you said 2 old people on one team. I said, Julie, that I wanted to balance it, and there are many ways to balance it fairly.
Julie's the most uncomfortable interviewer, and it is amazing that she hasn't improved after decades of experience.
You take Jeff Probst, who I believe is like a really great interviewer. I think he has his own issues at times with stuff and biases, and we already know that. But then you like turn to Julie, and she'll be like, Alex, in the house, you said blah, 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 blah. Would you like to elaborate on that? And it's like...
Sometimes she'll misquote you.
Yeah, she's like, you said, quote, well, maybe it wasn't a quote, but it was something like this.
We think we heard.
I love the one with where she's interviewing Jesse, like after he's won the next head of household or about his head of household week. And she's like, Jesse, like, how did you feel You said you thought everyone thought you were stupid and just liked you for your muscles. Do you feel they still look at you that way? And Jesse's like, what? It's like, you said everyone looks at you that way. Does everyone still look at you that way? And it's like, Jesse's like, well, I'm not acknowledging that everyone ever did look at me that way. So, you know, it's like, it's already confusing.
It's like, never
Ask
mind.
a simple question. It's live television. Stop with the filibustering. What are you doing?
Nowadays, she's just like, you are the biggest racist in the house, Jackson. what do you have to say about throwing around the N-word and making fun of Asian people? Please tell us.
Well, yeah, I feel like that's why they got rid of these HOH interview segments, is because like the quality of the house guests just like has gone down.
She doesn't give it, especially with the stuff going on with her husband, and she's Julie Shen Moonves now. She goes in that Moonves, it's all over.
Yeah.
She's just trying to get on the house guest level of awful.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
So we saw like the at home segments, which I really love too, and I really love the juxtaposition of
Can we
Rennie's
talk about,
family.
you know what? Bless all of them. None of them were good television. It was the flattest segment I've ever watched from a home visit. And it had two families, one of which was Rennie's fucking family. And they were the blandest people I'd ever seen grace the television show.
Probably can't get a word in that house.
Oh my God. Rennie was
used to it.
gorgeous though when she was younger. I have to say. Yeah. But I can't imagine. But, you know, and then they interviewed Jesse's mom, and she's just like, well, you know, Jesse's just, he was a fucking pipsqueak as a kid, you know, he got picked on and thrown in a couple of dumpsters. So that's
not only that, but they're totally fine with his behavior already. Like they're like, no, like he was in the right, like she was the one that was wrong. And then they like cut to Rennie's family, and they're like, yeah, he's a weasel, he is a punk, like just totally replicating like what she said about him.
Also, how do they also have a New York accent if they're all in? I'm so confused by the Rennie accent of Louisiana. Why? They all were like, my mom also was telling us that back in the, you know, the 40s, when they're not 40s, but you know what I mean? I just sit there.
Rennie's just not from this planet. Like that's what it comes down to, right?
I have family born and raised in New Orleans, and they do not sound like that.
Nobody sounds like that.
Brian Hart said
unless you're a 1940s gangster from the Bronx. I don't get it. Like, I'm so confused.
But yeah, I feel like they do these family. I feel like they do these family segments like when there is admittedly like some filler that needs to happen in the week. Of course, like we saw in episode 4, we got a lot of like personal segments from people. Like we saw Dan was asking Steven about being gay because he's like never met a gay person in real life. And then of course we saw like Memphis opening up to April and Libra about like being, like
that went on forever.
It did, yeah.
Memphis is like relationships. Jesus.
Yeah, he's like, I lost my dad at 15. I had a bad breakup, so I'm not emotional at all. Yeah, so just like, but I really kind of enjoy it. Yes, it's slow and like it's fine in a slow week like this, but I feel like this is stuff that we don't see in Big Brother in 2020 either, right? Like I feel like we don't like just
now.
Not as much. I mean, there's just too many segments. That's part of the problem. You know what I mean? Like there's too many things that have to go on. Like there's got to be some kind of like, you know, somebody's got to go to like the side room for the to get an app. You know what I mean? Like, right. and then they've got to receive their like app treatment. On the you know what I mean? Like they've got to like fit in all this stuff. So
yeah. We can't have those segments when we have Sam saying every single week, I have a chance to get back in the game.
Right. Yeah. Like the moments of people like really filling you in detail about who they are have been replaced with like, you know, that like heavyset guy who comes in and yells at people. You know what I mean? Like
I remember on Reddit there was like I feel like it was like a compilation video of Sam saying that in like the recap every single fucking week until she didn't use that.
Sam is such an enigma. Sam has just like had absolutely no. I mean, there's a lot of people now who don't know what they're really getting into. Sam had absolutely no idea what she was signing up
Allison,
for.
that could have been you. That could have been you saying,
It could have been me for just my spot.
And that show took such a toll on her mental health. Like, I really believe that Sam was just not the same person after she finished Big Brother. Like, it was disturbing.
They're doing a Big Brother 20 reunion, and she's not a part of it. So
no, I mean, she was like really good natured. I mean, and then like she's forced to play as the robot the whole first week, and she's so miserable. And by the end, she's saying a lot of like really dark things.
The curb stopping moment was like
really scary. I'm just like,
it's when you take someone's head in their mouth and put it on a curb and stomp on it with your
people are just not built for this show.
I'll never forget watching that with my parents, like the first week or so, and we were all like, "Oh man, like Sam, what a sweetheart! She's so nice." Blah blah blah. And she's like, "Do y'all like me? I'm so sorry that like I'm just a robot right now. I don't curb stomp these people." And all of a sudden we're like,
she said,
"Whoa!"
She said, JC, I'm gonna throw you over the banner, you little bitch. It was so good.
I'm gonna go down this hallway and that hallway and that parking lot, and I'm gonna leave the show. I mean, there was something else I noticed.
My happiness has been deleted. It's just such a mope. It was.
Did anybody else notice?
JC, I can't move on this carpet. Can you push me? I can't hear what anyone's saying.
I'm a robot.
No one will talk to me.
I'm a robot.
I'm a robot.
I have the chance. Oh yeah. Anyway,
guys, this was 10 seasons before or after BB10.
Something that did anybody notice the magical mustache that kept appearing, disappearing, and reappearing?
Yeah, you could totally tell that this like Memphis segment about being unemotional, that was like in the first week before he grew his handlebar mustache.
The power of editing.
I hate that.
That's also how you know that like it was a slow week, because they were like, we got to go back to week 1 and find some footage here.
Yeah. Let's go back to the Brian week.
We put Brian back in the house for the purposes of editing.
One segment though I did that was like a more human based instead of like gameplay was Jerry talking about his wife and like their final days. That was really heartbreaking to see in retrospect, like in this year, considering like she just died last year.
Oh, did she?
Yeah. About him saying like he won't put her in a nursing home, he'll always provide her. And I just thought that was really touching and moving, considering that she like now has passed away. But yeah, I just wanted to call attention to that. Sorry to bring down the mood.
She had Parkinson's, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That was really. He said, "I work out because I want to be strong enough to be able to carry her."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, the feels."
I know. Yeah, that was good. So I like I said, I enjoy these like human moments, like when. But the cast has to be good, right? Like they have to be able to like tell these stories and really have us as the audience like really engaged in what they're saying. So, Big Brother casting people, if you're watching.
Jerry on All Stars, if you're listening.
Oh my God, Jesus!
Get him back in there. Get him back in there.
I'd live for it. I'd vote for him for everything.
Wait, my other Jerry favorite moment from this episode was he was talking about being the host for the veto competition, and he goes, "If my voice ever clears up, I think I'd be a great television host." Wait! How long has this been going on, Jerry? You're just trying to say like this has just been since I got in the house. The air conditioning's really getting to it or something.
He's waiting for puberty. He's got like got the Benjamin Button thing. Like people don't realize. Like he's aging backwards. Like,
he's almost 15 now.
Yeah, when he does come back, he's gonna win all the competitions.
But in the meantime, he's like, beep beep.
Beep. Let me tell you something, bitch.
Let me tell you something.
Threw that in there. It's just like, oh damn.
Call me old.
So of course we saw like a clean sweep for Steven, unanimous vote for him to go. Lots of tears from him once he goes out and sees these goodbye messages, and for the most part they were touching, but I really loved Jesse's goodbye message. He was like, I hope you can use me as an example of someone who can achieve their goals and dreams.
The physical fitness goal, like Jesse.
You can do it, buddy, just like I did. Like, use me as inspiration. Like, totally, like, about himself.
Guys, can I just tell you who this reminded me of? And it's not a compliment. All of the stuff that Jesse, like, he got the power to his head and everything was about him. And that message immediately told me, oh my God, this was Raven. Raven was the one who would always be like, if you like me and you persevere through every single fucking disease and disorder I've ever had, you too can champion anything. Like, I got those kind of vibes. And I was just like, oh God, Jesse, no.
For the most part, Pandora's Box was a terrible twist because it was just a vessel for production to like insert methods to help their favorites. But there was like 2 times it was really great. And the second best time it was ever used was I think it was Bigbrother 13, where I think Rachel got it. And it was like, this Pandora's box, if you choose it, the house, like something will happen in the house, and like you don't know if the good thing is for you or for the house, right? Yeah. One is good and one is bad, and it's for either you or the house, and the opposite is the opposite. And it was like somebody who's going to help you in the game, right? And then I think Rachel went in there, and then she's trapped in there while everyone's like getting free money or something, and it's Jesse like doing a fitness routine, and it's like, I'm going to help you get in shape. It's like not at all what you thought it would be. That was great. And it was second only to when Ian got Rachel, when it was like someone who loves you is waiting to talk to you, and it was like, Ian, it's me, I love you.
Ian makes sure it's like a horrible twist, like a punishment in the game.
Yeah, you just they keep it vague enough where you don't know if it's going to be a reward or a punishment. But
nowadays it would be like, and now you have to listen to Elena talk about how she's, wasn't at all controlled by anything, that she still loves Mark, but she hates Mark, and that you have to talk to her for 15 hours.
They were on X on the beach. To anybody.
Or it'd be like, watch Justin Cody make out for 45 minutes straight.
Mark and Elena were on X on the beach?
Yeah, I can't. I couldn't. I tried. I quit that show. I can't do it anymore.
They're terrible.
I've somehow watched all the other seasons, but I couldn't watch them.
Yeah, I had to stop there. I was like, I can't do, because it had the chick from some girl band on there that was so Botoxed and just you know who I'm talking about? O'Day.
Aubrey O'Day, yeah.
Aubrey O'Day. Oh,
Mark hooked up with her on the show.
I can't do this. I need a life. God, give me a life.
So Bigbrother 10. So of course, like we end with like the aliens competition. I love that segment of like Rennie's like looking all around, like she
than just like, right in front of her.
She looks right at it, and then like keeps looking, and then she's like, ah.
I feel like their effects are a little crisper now than they were then. Like maybe it wasn't that clear through the mirror. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I feel like Rennie did look at it a couple times. You had to see it from the right angle, maybe.
Yeah,
it wasn't
but
perfect.
I always love those like fun little like segments where they scare people. But I really love this competition, the knockout comp, and this is one of the few ones that they still do nowadays in modern day Big Brother. But I love it because it shows like the people's cards.
I also love the last HOH where it's based on not like getting things right based on true or false, but it's based on correctly guessing what the majority thinks. Like they don't do that really anymore, and I wish they would bring that back, because that's really that takes like an extra, like that's a different part of the brain. You know what I mean? Like,
that's been a recent twist for Sequester minis.
Yeah, it's good.
It is good. Of course, like there are always like a few interesting things that come out of the knockout competition. One thing that really stood out to me was Libra chooses to save Ollie. She puts in Keisha and Memphis. So she like prioritizes like potentially knocking out Keisha over Ollie when like they're supposed to be like super together. And then of course it comes down to Libra and Keisha. Keisha of course wins the HOH, and then we see Libra like pretty bummed, but then like you see her like remember like, oh shit, I need to be happy. I need to like congratulate her.
Yeah.
So she like turns around and is like, and gives her a big hug. And I just love like, I feel like so much like thought. You saw like so much thought happen in those like 10 seconds. It was so great.
This season is one of the best in terms of like fake celebrations for HOHs.
Yeah.
I mean, April, the way she jumped into Jesse's
Jessie. Yeah.
absurd.
Yeah.
It was
yeah. So of course we see Keisha win HOH. Beth, I want to hear some predictions. What do you think is going to happen?
So given the pot starting to boil with Keisha and her other alliance members, I could see a scenario where she puts up two people that the majority of people want to put up, like a Dan. I still think that she's like potentially not good on Dan, and maybe even an Angie situation. But I also could see her starting to target April or Keisha, or not Keisha, Libra as well, just given the kind of friction that they've had as well. So I don't know if that's which direction she goes in, but I can see this being a week where the majority alliance that she's in starts to fall apart, because unlike Jessie, I don't see her taking what other people want her to do as seriously as what Jessie did. So I feel like she's going to be like, no. And I don't think she'll put up Rennie or Jerry. I think that she's closely aligned with them from what I can tell. I don't think that she'd put up Jessie, but I'm not sure. So I'm interested to see which direction she goes in, and if there's I could see this be a potential backdoor situation for like an April or a Libra.
Yeah. Joseph Boza in the chat. This is not a spoiler. He says it'll be interesting to see what Keisha does. I could see Libra going up for sure. I guess he's like watching it along with us for the first time too. So yeah, Keisha has a lot of, and we've seen her have segments of like being with April and Libra. We've also seen her say in the diary room a couple times like, I don't trust them. I don't want to work with these people. So I think this is a really interesting HOH to see which direction she ultimately goes in. Very exciting.
And I don't really know where she falls with like a Michelle. I mean, I can figure if she's having an issue with April, she might have an issue with Ollie. I don't know. I really don't know what her relationship is like with Memphis, which is why I had sat back and said that foursome of the Michelle, Memphis, Jessie, and Angie could be interesting, because I could see Keisha, if she likes them, doesn't seem like she doesn't like them, jump on board with them and start targeting the other people. So I don't know. We'll have to see. And for those of you in the chat, just know I'm actually not watching the chat messages for these shows anymore. So that you guys, for those of you who do know things and you want to talk about them, you can put them in the chat. Just be aware if you're not following along, or if you're watching this like me for the first time, maybe the chat isn't the safest place for you. But I'm not looking at the live comments. They're just going to bring them up when.
Yeah. One last closing thought about this week as it comes to an end. In my opinion, Steven's like the dud of the BB10 cast. So I was kind of happy to see him go out so soon. I just feel like every time he was in the diary room, I felt like he was about to cry. I didn't think that Big Brother 10 was very good for him. If we like say that we interviewed him, I don't think he would have the same reverence for his Big Brother experience like Brian did in his interview.
We probably will not be reaching out to Steve. Oh my God. So like that guy that just walked, okay, your dad or somebody.
That's my dad, yeah.
I was talking. Woohoo. Okay, anyway. So no, I just don't. You know, if you want to know what Stephen Dangle, Daigle, is up to, Dangle. Stephen Dangle. If you want to know what Dangle is dangling, just Google him and you will find out.
See, that's why I was going to disagree with Tyler. He did leverage I mean, you know, he went into Big Brother a rodeo clown and he came out a gay porn star. So you got the Big Brother career. The Big Brother career did give him a jumping, a little bit of a platform.
You know what? Good for him.
I mean, Allison messaged me and she reminded me. I was like, oh wait, that's right. But then I was like, if I didn't remember the gay porn, obviously it wasn't that good. So I looked down and I was like, yeah, it's all right.
I've always called him Stephen Dangle because it's like one letter off and he went into gay porn. I can't help myself. It's the lowest hanging of fruit, but it's right there. Sometimes you got to just pick it.
It was okay. It was all right.
So we're probably not. Nothing against it. I think he's great. I think he's busy.
Yeah. I think, like, you know, with him, like, I just think it's a good example of how, like, even if being put on the block and all this stuff sucks, like, of course, it surely sucks. Like, I'm sure there's nobody who's ever had it happen to them getting put on the block the second week and, you know, was happy about it. But you just gotta rein that all in. I mean, because it showed, like, when you're a bummer to be around, people just, like, spend less and less time around you. And, like, even the things he was saying, like, you know, to Keisha, like, you should probably just not talk to me. It's like, dude, don't say that. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
and
You're
that's why I
just
was
trying to want to keep that person.
don't be a bummer. You know what I mean? That's the one person that's trying to, you know, talk to you. And like, you know, his reasoning in the diary room was like, every time Keisha looked over during the veto, I tried to make a sad face. It's like, no, don't make a sad face at her and make her feel all guilty. Make a happy face and be like, yeah, go Keisha. Like, and don't, you know, extend any like vibes of like, I'm expecting you to save me. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta, I go back to like, what a great, these 3 episodes are pretty stagnant in terms of actual change in the game, but it's so great to watch the difference.
Like it's a big like setup week.
Yeah, it's like a case study. What Dan does and what Steven does. Like this is like you know those like videos like what was it always like, you know, like Bill and Bob, and like Bill always does the right thing and Bob always does the wrong thing. And be like Bill and don't be like Bob kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like this is one of the best Big Brother rounds for that, because there's a clear example of what's working really well and a clear example of what's not.
It's not working.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think that wraps it up for us this week. Oh, he doesn't have.
I have no idea.
You just search his name.
Dangle. It's not. It is actually Daigle.
It's right there. I don't know why
he didn't giving him his porn name.
Yeah, I don't know why he didn't just make that.
Yeah. And I was like, what?
Stevie Dangles.
So I think that wraps it up for us. Catch us next week, Wednesday, June 10th. We will be talking about episodes 7 through 9 and Keisha's reign as HOH. Is this Keisha's birthday week? Or no, it's one more week after that, right?
I cannot remember.
I think it's one more week after, but it's coming up soon for everybody.
I want you guys to know that I have resisted just binging so I could get to this birthday that I've wanted to know about for so long.
Yeah.
Oh, it's great. It's coming.
It's definitely the week after this one.
Yeah.
I copied. I started watching caught myself watching episode 7, and I was halfway through it and I was like, oh, shoot, I'm not supposed to be watching it, but I've already seen it, but I can't remember any of it.
Yeah.
It's a great trip down memory lane.
That's the thing. I mostly remember the order of like who goes home, but I don't remember who wins stuff and like who was nominated against who and who votes for who.
Yeah, good stuff.
And don't forget, guys, you guys can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts.
Yes.
And please, if you have an opportunity to rate and review, we also appreciate that. It helps us out a lot. And like and subscribe both here on YouTube and on Instagram under My Weekly Meltdown.
Yes, you can. Thank you, Beth. Oh, that saves me a lot of work. If you can follow everyone, they've got their little, I can't believe no one in the chat has noticed my name. Nobody has made a comment about
somebody did last week on Monday, I think.
On Monday, I just noticed your name because I'm Memphis. I'm from Memphis. Well, I live in Memphis, so I'm Little Memphis. Anyway, forget
Memphis has changed
a lot. Valencia did. That's right. Do what?
I'm just joking around. I said Memphis has changed a lot since BB10.
Yes, he has. He has very much so. A lot of people have. Brian got hotter. That's been a conversation all over the place.
Can I tell you, a lot of people were messaging me like, so Brian's hot. And I was like, Brian's a very attractive man. Yes.
Yes, he's a very good looking man. He's like wine. He ages very well. Anyway, thank you for watching My Weekly Meltdown. It gets warm in here sometimes. I can't reach this water. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Again, subscribe and all that stuff. We'll be back next Wednesday to talk about episodes 7 through 9. And I think Andrew Gibson is going to join the 4 of us. So that should be fun. I can't wait. He's a huge Big Brother 10 fan as well. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you between now and then.
All right.
And don't
Bye, guys.
forget to let it all dangle out.
All right. Goodbye.